Building a better Bay Area. Moving forward, finding solutions. This is ABC 7 News.
Hi there, I'm Kristen Z. You're watching Getting Answers live on ABC 7, Hulu Live, and wherever you stream. We're asking experts your questions every day at 3 to get answers for you in real time. Today, we have the executive editor and head of news for CNET to break down why airlines are canceling your flights and squaring off against cell phone companies over 5G service. Also, full-figure supermodel Emme is with us to spread her message of body positivity and self-love. But first, a lot going on in Washington, D.C. today that affects all of us. The congressional battle over voting rights and President Biden's nearly 2-hour press conference that just ended minutes ago, marking his 1 year in office. It comes as problems from COVID to inflation to divisions continue to challenge America and frustrate Americans. Joining us to talk about these issues is Bay Area Congresswoman Jackie Speier. Congresswoman Speier, great to have you on. It's been a while.
It has. How are you, Kristen?
I'm doing just great. Always happy to talk with you. And today, look, President Biden just wrapped up that big news conference. He admitted that he hasn't accomplished as much as he would have liked by this point on social spending, on voting rights. He continued to call himself an optimist, though. Do you actually think he is optimistic? Are you optimistic that his agenda can still be saved?
I absolutely think his agenda can be saved. It really needs to be fashioned differently in order to get the requisite number of votes in the Senate. It's really important to realize that we have a razor-thin majority in the Senate. And so any one senator can become king or queen because their vote is so critical to passing legislation. And so we've seen a fair amount of that from Senators Manchin and Sinema over the last few months. But in terms of Build Back Better, which is on the Senate side, passed the House, where we would provide child care that was going to be no more than 7% of the income of any one family in the United States, and where we would have universal pre-K, those elements could be saved. And it's important to save them because we've seen 1.3 million women leave the workforce since COVID, the lowest number of participation of women in the workforce since 1988. So it's important to have the infrastructure bill, which created 1 million jobs a year, 90% going to men, that we have a jobs bill for women, and that's what Build Back Better is about.
Yeah, he does have the infrastructure bill. That is a victory there. But in terms of Build Back Better, the president in his last few minutes in the press conference talked about the potential of kind of breaking that up into chunks, barring being able to get some Republicans on board or get Sinema and Manchin, to agree to the filibuster rule changes. Look, is that a way to do it? Tell us how this could happen and which chunks are most necessary.
So we can do that and not be subject to the filibuster rule if we do it through what's called reconciliation. And the two components I mentioned in particular, both the universal pre-K for all kids in America, that means there's be about 20 million kids in the United States who aren't in pre-K now who will be. It would be a huge benefit to them and frankly, to our economy over the long term. And then making sure that childcare is available to all families at a cost that would not exceed 7% of their income. Those two components, I think, can pass in reconciliation, and I do think there's a greater likelihood that the two senators would join in that particular measure.
All right. Some voters believe that they elected President Biden to right the ship, sort of be a caretaker, not to be transformational and reach as far as he has, they say. He said, of course, that he's not overreaching. And today he said he's not Bernie Sanders. What do you think he means by that?
Well, he is not the extraordinary progressive that we know as Bernie Sanders. And yet he's been labeled. I mean, he ran as a centrist. I believe he is a centrist. But many of these issues deserve our attention. President Trump, former President Trump, tried to get an infrastructure bill passed over and over again. He had infrastructure week and he would roll in semis and get in semi trucks to try and make the case. He never delivered. President Biden did deliver. In terms of some of the other issues that we're concerned about, childcare, pre-K, our friends, our allies in Europe already have all those programs. So not breaking new ground. And it would be a great benefit to families in the United States. So I do think he's a centrist, and I think for the most part he's ruling as a centrist.
All right. I want to talk about the other big issue on Capitol Hill today, voting rights protection bill. A vote could come in the Senate tonight, but of course it seems all but doomed. How would you explain to Californians, right, why we here should be alarmed if no federal law is enacted because of what is happening in other states?
So California has a robust voting rights package in place. Everyone can vote by mail. And in fact, now everyone in the state will get a ballot by mail that they can choose to vote by mail or then go to the polling place. What's happened across the country, we've now had 35 states, or no, I should say there have been 49 states that attempted to pass laws to restrict voting rights. And 19 of those states passed about 30 laws that will restrict. So you won't be able to vote by mail. You can't be offered water if you're standing in line. And in some states, they're actually empowering the Secretary of State to actually overturn the results of an election conceivably, which can't possibly be constitutional, but these laws have been passed. So the Voting Rights Act has always been in existence to deal with what has been discrimination against Black voters. And we've had Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan and George H. Bush and George W. Bush all support and pass and sign those voting rights extensions that basically says in those states where there's been efforts to discriminate against Black voters, that we will have these particular legislative proposals reviewed by the Department of Justice before they can go into effect. That was overturned by a decision in the U.S. Supreme Court back in 2013, I believe. And so we're trying to right that wrong. And that's what's problematic. The problem really is, do we really want to make it easier for people to vote or harder? Should we make Election Day a holiday? Should everyone be able to get a ballot by mail, even if they're not sick? Those are the kinds of questions that are being asked around the country. In California, we're in good shape because everyone has the right to vote by mail, and we've made it as easy as possible. That's not the case around the country.
One thing we are suffering here, too, like the rest of the country, is prices going up, inflation. Americans are feeling squeezed. What more can the federal government do to help with that?
Well, I think we've got to make sure that the supply chain is moving. Certainly it has moved. We didn't see during the holiday season an inability to access the toys we wanted for our kids and the resources that we needed for our family dinners. But the price of gas is very high in California. The price of food products, whether it's milk or eggs or bread, has gone up. So we need to address that. And I think the president is going to do everything he can to make sure that happens. Certainly as it relates to gas, we have released our supply of gas to make more gas available so that it would bring down the cost of gas. Again, we've got Saudi Arabia and some of the big oil countries that are restricting the distribution right now. So that's part of the problem as well.
Americans are also tired of the pandemic, and this latest surge is the last straw for a lot of people in terms of being able to cope with school closures and restrictions. A lot of people are also, confused by the mixed messaging they perceive having come out of the CDC and kind of the delayed getting test kits and masks out to people. What do you say to folks about that?
Well, I would say I'm as tired as you are about this. I'm really very happy that we're keeping our kids in school. I think they've lost a year of their education during COVID, so that's really important. I think that Omicron appears to have reached its peak and is starting the downward line, so to speak. But I think as we recognize that this variant has crippled us, it hasn't gotten us all the way down. So we're not, we are going to recover from this. And in terms of masks and home testing kits, they're now available. It's something the federal government is doing right now. Some might argue it's kind of coming late, but at least we'll have them. We'll have them if there's another variant. And the masks are very important. The KN95 masks are really important to be wearing for all of us.
As our viewers already know, you are retiring. Almost 40 more are joining you in not seeking re-election. We're talking about veterans in the House. But I think, if I'm right, there are twice as many Democrats as Republicans not seeking office again. Jerry McNerney of San Joaquin County is the latest. Look, do you think it's time, or do you think among the veterans there's this sense that, you know, that maybe there's a sense of frustration or just fatigue with what American politics has become lately?
No, I think the decision for every member is different. I would continue in this job for another 10 years. I have a spouse who wants to spend more time with me. And so I'm being responsive to that request. After 20 years of being a weekend wife, I've decided it's time to come home. That doesn't mean I won't be involved in the community. I intend to continue to be active, but I'm going to do it from a different place.
Do you think bipartisanship is still possible in America?
I think if we have a future, it has to be. But we are in a very, very toxic environment right now. And we've got to do our part in finding ways to work together. I certainly am working closely with the ranking member on the committee that I chair to find ways that we can work together as it relates to military personnel issues in the armed services. And I'm hopeful that my colleagues are doing the same.
We thank you for all that you're doing, but what do you think we can be doing as citizens?
Well, as citizens, I think it's important to convey to the powers that be that we should find perfect is not where we should be focused. It always takes compromise. It's important that that not be a dirty word. And, you know, the perfect should not be the enemy of the good. And sometimes that happens in the way we do business back here. And sometimes we pile a lot of issues into one bill when we would be better served if we took parts of them and tried to move them. We've got to talk to our colleagues on both sides of the aisle.
Congresswoman Jackie Speier, thank you so much. Always a pleasure speaking with you, even about weighty subjects. Appreciate that insight. Take care.
Thank you. Great to be with you, Kristen.
All right, coming up next, 5G fears. Major airlines are very concerned about the new and powerful cell phone technology. We're joined by the executive editor of CNET to talk about why. We'll be right back.
In commercial break.
All right, everybody, thanks for joining us today. Going to take a short little break here. Appreciate your comments as always. And then if you're confused about what 5G is and what it's got to do with like the airlines and why they're canceling flights to certain airports, and are you safe? We'll have that conversation after a couple minutes. The launch of the new 5G cell phone service in the U.S. today has caused major flight disruptions and cancellations. A showdown between major airlines and key cell phone carriers. Airlines warned the service could interfere with aircraft technology, making it unsafe to land, and so they've responded by canceling flights. Now, cell carriers, Verizon and AT&T, have agreed to limit the service around some airports for now. It's all very confusing, but joining us to help us understand what's happening is the executive editor and head of news for CNET, Roger Chang. Roger, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right, what is 5G? Why is it billed as faster and better?
So, sorry. Speaking of technology, my AirPods just decided at the last minute that it needed to die.
Oh, yeah. Keeping it charged, keeping it charged. Okay, so quite simply, what is 5G?
5G is basically, it's the next generation of wireless technology. It is like 4G. It's basically like your cell service, but a lot faster with more capacity. Well, at least that's what the hype has all been about. So the last couple of years, the carriers have been rolling out 5G networks across the country. Those networks have been largely meh, slightly faster than 4G, in some cases even slower. But what they were turning on today is basically an upgraded version of this. So some of the true speeds that they've been hyping up for years, you'd actually be able to get, but they've run into some interference, literally some interference with the airliners and airports.
But let's explain that a little bit more for those of us who are non-physics majors. You know, how does that technology interfere with the plane's instrumentation, especially as it's trying to come in and land? I understand it has to do with radio waves, but give us the short, explainer there.
Yeah, so essentially, the radio frequencies or the radio airwaves that Verizon and AT&T are using sort of sit at a frequency that's very close to the frequencies used by plane altimeters. That's the measurement tool that allows planes to figure out what their height is. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of concern that because the radio airwaves are they're basically right next to each other, that there's a chance that they interfere with each other, and pilots would be unable to adequately or safely land their planes. And so there's a lot of questions about how big a risk there actually is, because these concerns popped up relatively late in the game. And this spectrum has been sort of cited and been tested for about 2 years now, and we're only hearing from the airlines vocally, or from the FAA vocally, really over the last 2 months. So it's kind of an interesting case, but obviously the carriers like Verizon and AT&T don't want to be blamed for flights being canceled, so they've basically agreed to delay the rollout of their upgraded 5G network around these airports.
Right. For how long?
Unclear. They basically delayed it indefinitely. They wouldn't comment on when they'd actually be able to turn the networks on. Now, keep in mind, they have turned on the networks elsewhere. Yeah. Across the country, Verizon has said 90 million people are covered. And so it's really largely focused on the airports and those crowded areas around that.
Okay, I'm very amused. I mean, not making fun of you, but I'm laughing with you. It's clearly a work from home situation, and someone's needing mommy, and daddy's busy on this interview here. So I'll try to wrap it up with you soon so you can help. But look, other countries already have 5G. I think dozens already have it, so it's not new. So shouldn't the safety question be resolved already because of other countries' examples? Shouldn't we know?
Yeah, that's why there are a lot of questions about just what exactly the airlines want, because there are 40 countries that operate this exact band of spectrum, including Japan, where just yesterday, Japan Airlines, JAL, canceled incoming flights into the U.S. because of this issue. And so there are a lot of questions about it. Emirates Airlines CEO, I believe, spoke on CNBC today and talked about how there's something about how the U.S. tunes their antennas that makes it a unique situation, which is why it's more of a risk. But to be perfectly frank, we don't know, and we've been trying to verify. And the carriers aren't talking about that. They've only largely said that they've maintained the party line that the spectrum of the radio frequencies being used are safe and have been tested. But
look, I've only got like about 20 seconds left, but I gotta ask you, why are we just talking about this now, right? Where was the discussion between the carriers, the airlines, the FAA, and the FTC over the past few years? Because this is not like, hey, guess what? We're gonna start this 5G rollout expansion near airports tomorrow. It's a several-year process.
That is a fantastic question, and one we're really trying to wrestle with, because to your point, this spectrum has been around and has been tested. The carriers spent $80 billion on this last year in a very high-profile FCC auction. So there was a lot of time for the FAA to vocalize their concerns. And it's a little unusual that they're coming so late into the game with these issues when really the spectrum has been around and we all knew that the spectrum was going to be used for wireless service.
Unusual and definitely a little frustrating. Roger, thank you so very much. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you, Roger.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up next, she paved the way for full-figured models. Now she's made it her life's mission to spread a message of body positivity. A supermodel, Emme, will be joining us next.
Commercial break.
All right, everybody, thank you very much for sticking around through that. I hope that left you with a slightly better understanding of the challenges the 5G technology may pose for airlines and planes that need to see how high they are, right, their altitude. All right, take a short break. Enjoy this view. We'll be right back. So you're just going to have to watch me do something here.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Multitasking.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Love the skin that you are in. It's an important message for all of us, but it's not always easy to maintain a positive body image. For decades, supermodel Emme has been a champion for self-esteem. She believes beauty comes in all shapes and sizes. And Emme is joining us now to spread her message of body positivity. Emme, great to have you here.
So nice to say hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Look, you were the first plus-size supermodel. Oprah called you the godmother of the full-figure industry, right? For the youngins watching us, when did you get started in modeling? How did that happen?
Yeah, I got started about 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago. I joined with Ford Models back in '96, and I was a Revlon model in '97 and wrote books and had a few clothing lines and hosted TV shows. So I've been doing this work for quite some time. It all revolves around positive body image and diversity, inclusion, and the array of beauty, like a bouquet of beauty.
Oh, bouquet, I love it. Like, I mean, those concepts seem so normal to us now, but they weren't necessarily when you were trailblazing and starting out, right, being full-figured. Now we see so many different shapes, right, in celebrities and models. So do you think we've really evolved very far as a society? I mean, are you surprised by how far we've come?
I'm happy to see that we have taken some nice leaps and bounds forward. I'm very delighted to see more diversity on the runway. I'm very, very happy to see in campaigns that we'll see a variety of women, both in size and hues of color and in age. It's very, very healthy for our society to be able to see ourselves reflected in the image of beauty that's out there. There's room for growth, and there's a lot of parents and caretakers and our own jumping into with social media. Beware, because online there's a lot of filters. There's a lot of misconceived notions of beauty that we just have to keep our eyes open and help our kids with.
And it could lead to, you know, really low self-esteem. You know, if you do have a teenager, you know, you talk about kids, what's your advice to parents?
Well, you model the behavior that your children will adopt when they're very, very young. And the first thing I ask is, please do not put a device into your 2 or 3-year-old's hands, because they're so cute, because they know exactly what to do. We don't want those neurons firing in such a way that they become addicted very early on, and then try to take the device away when you want to be able to put down your parameters. So at a very young age, no cell phones at the table, obviously, and do not bring them into your bedroom. So if you have a charging station in a, and you check it before you go to bed, and unfortunately some parents have to lock them, but that's a sad case of affairs.
I mean, we do some of those things in our household, so yay. But I do want to talk about the pandemic, because it's led to changes in our bodies for a lot of people, maybe weight gain. And one study found that calls to the National Eating Disorders Association helpline increased 40% during the pandemic. Yes. So give us some tips on how we can manage those feelings, anxiety over our looks right now, or our health.
Right. So instead of thinking what's going wrong with our bodies, we have to realize that we could not get outside and do the regular walking around, being active. So for some who like to get out into nature and go on hikes, you could do that. But right here, right now, what can your body do for you now? Does it allow you to taste really good food? The positive things, does it allow you to have this human life? It does. And so what we can do is not lean on the negative that perpetuates, that pushes us forward into some bad behaviors. Eating comfort foods most of the time. Listen, thank God we had comfort food, but within reason. We need to have more fruits and vegetables and really life-affirming foods to keep us going and having our bodies work well. And yes, you can have a few cookies, but not the whole box.
That's what I say. Moderation, Emme. Folks, we got to take a short break on the air, but join us over on Facebook Live to continue our conversation. So basically don't cut it all off or punish yourself, right? It's not, you shouldn't be thinking of it that way.
Absolutely not. There's certain things during a pandemic, I've never gone through this. We've all never gone through this. This is the one unifier around the world, no matter who you are, whether you're the person that is sweeping the floors or the Queen of England, we all have shared in this issue. And we continue to share in this issue. So being more gentle, being more kind, and also if you can pick up the practice of daily gratitude. What is really going on that's very, very healthy and good in your life? What can you be, abundantly grateful for? And also, if you can get out and be in nature, not to lose weight, but to clear the mind, to be able to release stress. That is really very, very important, because when we can get all the energy out of our system, we're going to be able to relax more and be in our bodies and just be tender and caring with our bodies. If we've gained some weight, okay, it's going to normalize. It will. We just have to look at what we're eating. If we're getting enough sleep, when we don't have enough sleep, our bodies will provide us with more cortisol, thus a little bit more of a thickness around the waistline. So sleep, hydration, eating well, and getting out there and having some peace in your day.
I kind of blame the middle thing on aging, and I feel like that's okay, because who doesn't age? If it's something that's normal, why would I think ill of myself for it,
Correct. No, we should have bodies that morph over time, and there's no way that our bodies should be like they were in college. They will change. So accepting what is and helping it along, helping our bodies be the best that they can be by not denying food, not overdoing it, but trying to find that happy medium that you had just mentioned.
I love the positivity you exude. For folks who are interested in seeing more from Emme, go to emmestyle.com. Thanks a lot. Take care. Happy New Year.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
3, 2, 1.
Thank you so much for joining us on this interactive show, Getting Answers. We'll be here every weekday at 3 on air and on live stream answering your questions. So we'll be back here tomorrow. And of course, you want to stick around for World News Tonight. And I'll be back here at 4 o'clock. Have a great day.